Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blueprints Podcast, a podcast for Chargers Unleashed. Today, we are just going to be covering a couple topics on different things that have happened over the week. Learned my lesson from the live show, so this time I brought something to drink. In the future, maybe we'll do something more along the lines of coffee and questions, just so that I can use coffee as an excuse to take a break from talking sometimes and relax for a moment. But nothing too crazy today. Just watched Jordan Love throttle the Cowboys, so that was quite the experience. For those of you that don't know, I have been huge on Jordan Love back since he got drafted alongside Justin Herbert. I was a very big advocate for Jordan Love for the Chargers. Who's to say that would have worked out for the Chargers, though? There's no way of knowing. So, yeah, I feel like a good place to start here is with Ian Cunningham. He's the first thing I have written down here, and we'll just start with that. So, Ian Cunningham interviewed for the Chargers today, which is Sunday. This episode should be coming out early over the course of the week. I'm a big Ian Cunningham fan. He was my number one since the get-go. I know a lot of people liked Peters from San Francisco. Ian Cunningham, to me, just has a more established resume, or one that is more established to me. I'm more comfortable with a general manager taking over who provides this kind of perspective coming in. Now, just the three guys that Ian Cunningham has worked under have been Ozzie Newsome, Howie Roseman, and Ryan Poles. All three have made Super Bowl appearances, and I think if you tally it up, it equates up to 6. So 6 Super Bowl appearances between the three of those mentors for Ian Cunningham. Now, with general manager, there's no like proven thing you can go to, right? Look at with a head coach, you have, you can point to their wins and losses. You can argue against it, you can argue for it, but you can point to wins and losses. You can point to players that they fought for. Generally, that's more public knowledge of like who a coach fought for versus who a GM fought for, let alone an assistant GM or a director of player personnel or a head of scouting or anything like that. So it's a little harder for us as a fan base to look at general manager candidates and come up with, hey, I think this guy will hit, or I think this guy will hit. It's more so just looking at the body of work of the front offices they've been in, look at the perspective that they've fallen under, the perspectives that they've gained through their experience under these different organizations. And the perspective he brings comes from 3 really good general managers. So for me, Ian Cunningham to me is just, I'm more comfortable with saying like, hey, I really like this general manager candidate. I think that he brings something to the table from these winning organizations. And I would like to see what that perspective is. You just give it a shot. Because at the end of the day, man, it's you're thinking you're probably going to be stuck with this guy for a decade. So you want to get it right, but just with the limited knowledge we have right now, you look at Baltimore, you look at Philadelphia, you look what Chicago's done over the last 2 years. You look at the DJ Moore trade, you look at TJ Edwards being brought in solely because of Ian Cunningham. TJ Edwards says Ian Cunningham was the first person that came to him through that process. I like what Ian Cunningham has done for the Bears, and I like the perspectives he has gained from Baltimore and Philadelphia. Is he going to hit? I don't know. I just don't know because, I don't have that info of, hey, what has he brought to the table in these front offices? Those front offices are extremely tight-knit or tight-lipped. So it's no way of knowing, but you can't look at his body of work and think, yeah, that doesn't do it for me. So definitely somebody I'm really happy the Chargers are interviewing at the very least to get that perspective, and excited to see how that goes moving forward. Next up, we have Jim Harbaugh meeting with the Chargers this week, according to Pelissero and Rappaport. So I think this actually got confirmed by a couple other sources as well. Look, we've been hearing it all off season now. We were hearing it even towards the end of the season that there was mutual interest there. I'm not shocked at all that he's at least interviewing with the Chargers. This is not news to me. It shouldn't be news to anybody. this was going to happen. Now, granted, Jim Harbaugh has been very selective in who he interviews with in off seasons. I believe it was Vikings in 2022, and I believe it was Denver last year. So Jim Harbaugh is very selective with those interview processes. So the fact that he's interviewing with the Chargers is a good sign. But like the Chargers have stated, it's going to be a broad search. And from everyone we've heard from in the media, that's exactly what they're doing. Is they're gonna cast a very wide net here. I think I've stood on this. If the Chargers want to hire Jim Harbaugh, they will get Jim Harbaugh. I don't think there's any question of that in my mind. If they go for Jim Harbaugh, they're going to get Jim Harbaugh. I don't think there's a scenario in which they want Jim Harbaugh and make a push for Jim Harbaugh that Jim Harbaugh says no. If I had a nickel for every time I just said Jim Harbaugh right there, I would have a lot of money. So for what it's worth, JJ McCarthy did declare. Some have equated that to meaning Jim Harbaugh is going to come to the NFL. I don't know. I think those are two completely separate things, but for what it's worth, that did happen. Chargers have valued experience in this process. We have had multiple reports that head coaching experience in particular, is towards the top of their list in necessities. So obviously they're going to go after one of the more experienced coaches on the market right now in Jim Harbaugh, and someone who's won in both college and the NFL. And, there is that advantage too for winning in college in this last year and going to the NFL, more familiar with some of the prospects around you and such like that. There is that 2-year grace period, I guess you could say, where college coaches usually know what they're getting when they draft players. And, every other head coach outside of Jim Harbaugh, I stop and think for a moment, can I see them not being with the Chargers in a few years? And I think, there's two coaches where I look at and say oh yeah, without a doubt, those guys would stick around for a while. They would not flame out. And I think that's Vrabel, and I think that's Jim Harbaugh. Even Ben Johnston, who is my number 2, that's my number 2 guy right there. Even with Ben Johnston, you can look at a scenario where it didn't work out. But with Jim Harbaugh and Mike Vrabel, they're just the candidates I'm most comfortable with in terms of, can I see them with the Chargers 5 years from now? Can I see this culture being established? And the answer is generally yes, I can. So I feel like there's not too much to talk about with Jim Harbaugh at this point. We've covered him so much this offseason already, and I don't know if that hire is going to happen anytime soon. It could be tomorrow. It could be down the line. So we will see. But I am rooting for Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers as my number 1 candidate. And here's to hoping it happens. So another topic for the day. Obviously, just watched Jordan Love destroy the Cowboys. And, being a quarterback sitting behind Aaron Rodgers has to have its benefits, but you look at the coaching staff there, particularly in offense. We all know that Green Bay defense has its struggles, but particularly that offense, and Matt LaFleur, and what Matt LaFleur has done for Jordan Love. And you can't help but look at Ben Johnson in a similar way. Man, get an offensive head coach who can work with you for a while, and LaFleur has worked with Jordan Love for a while now. Jordan Love has been in that system for years. And you see the reps, every single rep, it's like Jordan Love gets more and more comfortable. There hasn't been a rep yet in multiple weeks where I watched and thought, man, Jordan Love looked uncomfortable there. No, in the face of pressure, he knows where routes are. He knows where the coverage is going to be lacking, and he knows where to put that football. You think about that, and you think about continuity in an offense, continuity on a football team, continuity for your quarterback. And I don't know how you don't take those offensive coaches and just take him way up the board. If they that's why Ben Johnston is such a high candidate for me. Why he's my number 2. I think about not just next year and what he could do for Justin Herbert. I think about 5 years from now. And like I said, there is a scenario 5 years from now where, maybe that doesn't work out. Maybe the offense is not, you just never know. But especially with a new coach. But that's why Ben Johnston is so high on the board, is because you look at Jordan Love and what he's doing with LaFleur, and it's just unbelievable what those two have going for them right now. So did Brandon Staley unlock Jordan Love? I've seen this brought up a lot over the course of the last few weeks, and especially today after watching that Dallas game. Did the Chargers unlock Jordan Love? How was Jordan Love playing leading up to the Chargers? He wasn't perfect prior to playing the Chargers, but you look at the stats and then you look at the tape, and it's very obvious that Jordan Love was playing a lot better than people seem to think. His game against the Broncos, Vikings, Rams, Steelers, he was putting up some clutch throws in the face of pressure. He was looking extremely comfortable. He obviously had his moments where he was uncomfortable. You talk about that mid-season where he was in kind of like a lull for like 3 weeks there after he started off hot, kind of fizzled out a little bit. And then you saw it like each week, there was like a little bit of progression there where you were starting to see some clutch moments where he was comfortable. He was comfortable in the face of pressure. I think the Packers started 2-5. And from that point on, man, Jordan Love was putting up some great football games. I was really impressed with his comfort level, even in just moments where you don't want your rookie quarterback to be in, or not rookie quarterback, but your first year quarterback to be in. You don't want him to be in those moments. And for the most part, he was delivering. And confidence is key for a young quarterback. So I have no doubt that the Chargers game definitely helped Jordan Love. But you look at that offense, you look at Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson when he's been healthy this year. You look at Jaden Reed. You look at Dontavian Wicks, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. Extremely, extremely young offense. I think it's one of the youngest offenses in football playoff history. If I believe I saw that stat somewhere, don't quote me on that. But I do know it's among the youngest offenses in football that I've ever seen in the playoffs. They needed time to develop. And the more repetitions they got together, because normally what you have is you have that veteran presence. You have that veteran presence who's there for you as a quarterback, where he's kind of your guy in those moments, those clutch situations. And right now that's Romeo Doubs. And he's not a veteran. He's a second-year player, and he still has a lot of room to grow. I don't know that the Chargers unlocked Jordan Love because that offense just needed time. I'm not defending Brandon Staley here at all. I'm on record for saying that he was the worst head coach in the NFL this season. Is he the worst head coach? I don't know, but I do know for what he showed over the course of the season, he was the worst this year. But I don't buy that the Chargers unlocked Jordan Love. I think they definitely helped. But if you watch the 4 games prior, that game was going to happen. Brandon Staley's defense was already struggling, and Jordan Love was on the way up. He was looking exceptional leading up to that game. The stats don't reflect it. But yeah, I don't buy into that. But we'll move off of that topic now, and we'll start talking about the upcoming free agency period and the upcoming draft. And this is going to largely depend on who they get to hire as their coach. So, team needs for free agency and draft. And now these first two are going to seem extraordinarily broad. It's not a specific position, but I'll explain later why it's not a specific position right after I explain these first two needs. First need, explosiveness on offense. Now, there's a player that may or may not be there when the Chargers select at 5 that I'm really looking at when I think of explosiveness on offense, and that is Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU. So explosiveness on offense is something the Chargers have lacked for better part of basically the whole decade outside of Tyrell Williams. You know, you look at Travis Benjamin, and maybe in his first year on the Chargers, he provided a little bit of that. But I would say Tyrell Williams was probably the explosive player for the Chargers. Ladarius Green, when he was there, there's a random name thrown at you. Ladarius Green, tight end for the Chargers, who was kind of like that old Donald Parham player for them. Was a really big fan of Ladarius Green. But since those couple of players that I've named, they have really lacked that explosive presence. Now, Malik Neighbors, and even if you're a fan of Brock Bowers, I would also throw Brock Bowers' name in there. Malik Neighbors misses or forces missed tackles at a rate unlike what I've ever seen from a receiver. You look at his rate out of the slot. It's hovering around 50% in the slot and 50% out wide, and he makes people miss in both spots. Regardless of whether he's getting the ball early, at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage, 5 yards, 15 yards, it doesn't matter. Malik Neighbors makes somebody miss, and he has some of the best burst. The first step into going top speed is ridiculous. That man can reach top speed in the blink of an eye. Next need, and we'll come back to more prospects in a moment here. We're just discussing needs for now. So we're going to go to physicality on defense. Now, again, I know these are broad. The Chargers lost games early a lot this year because you just didn't feel that physicality at the beginning of the game. You didn't feel the tone set at the beginning of the game. There was no game where you think back to 2018. You think back and remember these games where Melvin Ingram and Derwin James, these guys would set the tone really early on. And the entire game would be a rout. I think back to, I believe it was the Titans in London. I think it was back in 2018 where the Chargers were up by 40 plus points. And I think about the deep Tyrell Williams touchdowns that were resulting off of big defensive stops and plays. And I think back to that physicality on defense and the opportunities it opens up for your offense to go create momentum, you know, and it provides opportunities for Phillip Rivers to get back out there. You know, that's what you want right now. You just really want a defense that can get Justin Herbert the ball more and more and more. You want takeaways, you want physicality. I think right now, and this is kind of against what I've preached, whereas I advocate for guys like Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, where if you're getting turnovers, I don't really care. I just don't really care. But in the case of the Chargers right now, I think physicality is needed more than turnovers. I think it is. I think more than anything, more than takeaways right now, they just need to be able to set the tone early. They need guys in the middle there that can break games wide open. And I think Tuli showed that towards the beginning of the season, but they need more help. They just need more help there. I think if you get a guy on the inside who just real mean streak, real nasty football player, if you get, man, it's going to sound interesting, but I talked about a few weeks or a couple days ago, actually. Could you imagine a team having Adrian Phillips, Kaiser White, and Drew Tranquil all on the field at the same time, and the versatility that would bring. And I just can't stop. I can't get that out of my head when I'm thinking about these team needs for the Chargers, the needs in terms of depth, in terms of physicality, in terms of, we'll turn this into talking about potential guys in a moment here, but it's potential guys that could sign or draft. But, I think about those 3 players and what they brought to the Chargers organization, all separate from each other. And they really could use all 3 of those guys last year, the year before. They extremely frustrating to think back about. So we won't do it for too long, because I know if I'm frustrated about it, there's definitely more of you that are frustrated about it than me. But physicality on defense, they absolutely need it. And if they want to go that route early, there's a couple guys I really like. I like, if you trade back, Nate Wiggins out of Clemson at cornerback, I think is a really good move for the Chargers. I think that's a phenomenal move. You trade back to, say, one of the quarterbacks falls to 5, talking to Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams, whoever it may be. Say one of them is there at 5, talking about a trade back with a team like Atlanta, for example, and letting them go get their guy, trading back and taking a Nate Wiggins or taking a Leatu Latu, taking just one of those physical defensive players. I am not opposed to that at all. Of course, also assuming that if one of the quarterbacks is there, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. are probably gone. So definitely scenario there where physicality on defense is important. I look at Michigan. You look at Michigan and what they did on defense in that championship. And this is why I said it largely depends on what coach they go and get. If they go and get Jim Harbaugh, and you're talking about a guy like Barrett coming out of Michigan, the linebacker for Michigan, I believe his name is Michael Barrett, stood out to me several times. Big fan of his. And I just think that physicality has to be a focal point moving forward. And you're going to see why those team needs were so broad, is because we're about to get more into specific team needs right now. We'll start with defense here, just because I feel like defense is maybe on paper the bigger need. Interior D line, a linebacker, cornerback, safety, edge. That's every level of the defense. That is every single level of the defense. That's every player. That's every position on the defense. Alohi Gilman is probably on his way out. There's a chance he stays. There's that opportunity for sure. But even if they keep him, they need more safeties. JT Woods can't even get on the active roster in year 2. And he was playing corner towards the end of year 1. I don't know if people remember that. He was playing corner against Denver, I believe. So they need a safety. And they need corners. They definitely need corners really bad. I think there's only one starting caliber corner on their roster right now in Asante Samuel Jr. And you just have to look at games from last season to know that DB room is a real issue. And that cornerback position, that safety position too, they need a lot of improvement. And third safety is almost absolutely a necessity in today's NFL, where either you need that third safety or you need that fourth corner that can get on the field in dime packages and make a difference, or at least play sound football. Javian Hawkins turned into that late in the season. It was Dean Marlowe at first. And both of those positions, huge needs. Linebacker, they got rid of Kaiser White. They got rid of Drew Tranquil. And they're going to let Kenneth Murray walk. If I'm not going to touch on that too long, but Kenneth Murray's probably going to be gone as well. Should be. Because that linebacker room needs a reset. Eric Kendricks probably gone because they need the cap, and the linebacker room wasn't good. I think Kendricks definitely got a bad rap over the course of the season, but we're not here to talk about that. But linebacker is definitely in need as well. They need it really bad because they don't retain players there that perform well for them. And they go and get older players or draft guys in the first round to take over for those guys they let walk. Just you look back to Denzel Perryman. It's been a real issue for them. They just can't retain linebackers, and extremely frustrating to look back at. And it was frustrating in the moment too. It's not like anybody didn't see this coming. Everybody saw this coming. Everybody saw this year coming where the linebacker room would greatly regress. And it's unfortunate that everybody saw it coming except for the Chargers. Interior D-line. They just let Sebastian Joseph Day go to the 49ers. Austin Johnson didn't look too good over the course of the entire season. He had his moments. Tito came back after injury, and he had his really bright spots, but we just don't know if he could do it consistently yet. So interior D-line is another need that is huge for the Chargers. Obviously, I don't think I'm taking one early like Newton. I don't think I would take Newton in the top 10. I think that's more of like a top 15 to 17 player that you look at. But definitely a need for the Chargers. Then there's some mid-round guys that we'll discuss later on in this offseason. We'll talk about that maybe next week after all the declarations are finished. All these guys are done declaring. So moving on to the offensive side of the ball and what their needs are. Wide receiver, tight end, running back, and interior O-line, specifically center. So I don't think Gerald Everett's even under contract for next season. Keenan Allen might be gone. Mike Williams might be gone. Josh Palmer has been injured for a couple of years now. A lot of concussions there. So definitely concerns. Jalen Guyton's probably gone. The only two real guys that for sure are staying are Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis, who they did not get involved in the offense very, very well last season or very often. I look at the wide receiver and tight end positions and, say even they bring Keenan Allen back and you roll into next season with Keenan Allen. And I do think they bring Keenan Allen back, by the way. You roll into next season with Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis as your 4. You still need somebody there because Quentin Johnston, you're looking at what are your guarantees? I talked to somebody a while back who works in an NFL front office who said, if you have a player sit in year 1 or underperform in year 1, and you go into year 2 expecting that player to make strides and develop, you got to think of it as you are going into year 2 with an unknown player. You don't know if that player is going to be good or not. So why would that player take that need off of your board? And for me, that is exactly, I've stuck with that for ever since I was told that, because that means wide receiver is absolutely a need for them. Because you look at Keenan Allen, and then you look at Josh Palmer, who can't stay healthy. You're going to need a number 2 there at some point in the season. You're going to need a number 1 there because Keenan Allen, he's going to be 32 years old. Even if he does stay healthy all 17 games, there's a point where 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that wide receiver 1 role is going to shrink and shrink and shrink, regardless of how we feel about Keenan Allen. It's going to happen. We're aware of it. He's aware of it. And you can't go into next year expecting Quentin Johnston to be able to fill that wide receiver 1 role again. You can't do it because he didn't show anything. So wide receiver is absolutely a need for the Chargers. Whether they go and get it in the draft, Malik Neighbors, everybody knows that's my guy, Malik Neighbors. Or if you go into free agency and get a Kendrick Bourne, just somebody who could be a solid wide receiver 2, somebody who was wide receiver 1 for a while in New England. Go get somebody that can do it. Because right now you don't have somebody that can do it behind Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer. And even Josh Palmer as wide receiver 1 had its struggles as well. So they definitely need somebody to come in and improve that wide receiver room. Look, I pretty much just named every position on the team other than quarterback. Running back is another need I listed. Look, we don't have to cover that. We all know what happened this year with running back. Interior O-line, Corey Linsley probably retiring. Man, congratulations to him. What a great career, and super happy for him. But it is a bummer. But man, gotta be happy that man can go and rest and put a stamp on a terrific career. Look, just draft good players, and you'll be okay. Just, is there a good prospect? Is there a good free agent? Are they good at football? You need them. Go get them. That's where they're at. Top to bottom on the roster, they need players. If there's a good player, if you like him, if you like this guy, I don't care what position he plays, other than quarterback early, go get him because you need him. You absolutely need him. The Chargers need him. Regardless of where, regardless of what, they need him. So as long as they draft good players, I really don't care. I don't care what need they address where, other than Malik Neighbors at 5. Even if they trade that away and go get Nate Wiggins at 8, I'm okay with that. Go get good players. I don't care. Because they need good players. That's end of story. Beyond that, whatever. You can look into whatever needs you want or whatever needs you want them to address. But at the end of the day, the Chargers just need good players really bad. And one position, and this will kind of wind it down, one position they need really bad is running back. Look, they're losing everybody outside of Isaiah Spiller at running back. It's maybe they bring Dotson back. I don't know. But they're going to be losing everybody. And some of the key things that I think they need at that position heading into the next year: pass blocking, receiving, and creativity with the football. And I think about those things, and I think about, man, who can they go get before the draft then? And the first name that popped in my mind was Antonio Gibson. I think this is, I'm putting my foot down on this early. Antonio Gibson is the perfect free agent signing for the Chargers. I absolutely think it needs to happen. Do I think it will? I have no idea. But Antonio Gibson needs to be everybody's, like, that needs to be the guy in this free agent. He was the guy for me last year when Austin Ekeler was asking to be traded. I was saying, man, send him to the Commanders for Antonio Gibson in a 5th or a 6th. And people were like, no, you get way more than that for Ekeler. That's a good trade. And right now you can go sign him. Just go sign him. And I think Antonio Gibson is absolutely that guy for the Chargers. 71.9 pass block grade this past season. 4.1 yards per attempt in a limited amount of carries. You talk about a position that definitely needs to get in a rhythm. And he was getting over 4 yards per carry without that rhythm at all. And he added almost 400 yards of receiving. Just a great all-around back that they need on this roster, really bad. And look, you can be in the NFL for a really long time as a running back. Everybody points to the age thing. And there is definitely validity there, but there are 2 things that if a running back has these 2 things, they can be in the NFL for longer than most. Can you pass block? Can you catch the football? If you can pass block and you can catch the football, you're going to be around for a minute. And I look at Ezekiel Elliott over in New England, and I look at what he did for that Patriots offense. And, they weren't good, but you look at what he did on 3rd and longs catching the football, or 3rd and longs blocking for either Bailey Zapp or Mac Jones. And Ezekiel Elliott was a playmaker this last year. Just the amount of things he did in that veteran role. And he was called up a couple times to start and was just a really solid back. And I know some people were even pointing to some stats that showed that Ezekiel Elliott was actually outplaying Tony Pollard this season. Look, I don't care what Ezekiel Elliott was doing on the ground, but what he was doing from a pass blocking and receiving standpoint was really good work. There were just so many opportunities where that offense looked dead in the water, and then he would catch a pass on like 3rd and 15 and convert it. So I look at what he provided for that offense and that small amount of stability they could get, very small amount of stability they could get. And I think Antonio Gibson is a guy you absolutely need there. next year for the Chargers. Now, there are a couple names in the draft I like as well. I look at Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. I look at Donovan Edwards out of Michigan. Both guys are really like in this sort of role. And obviously, I think Donovan Edwards would play a larger role than that for the Chargers. Braylon Allen as well. But both guys are really like. And then in terms of a later round guy, Frank Gore Jr. Had a 71.6 pass blocking grade, which is actually really high compared to a lot of those draft eligible guys have put up. And he's a good runner too, highly graded runner. And, you watch his tape and you like what you see. I really like Frank Gore Jr. late. And, I think all of the names I mentioned are guys that could come to the Chargers next year and play a significant role. Because that position is just dead in the water for them right now. It doesn't look good. They're losing Ekeler. They're losing Kelly. And Spiller's really the only guy I think that's going to return. And, as much as we wanted him to get more reps, what did he show? This team has a lot of needs. This team has a lot of GM and head coach are needs right now. It's at the top, all the way to the top. Backup quarterback's a need right now. They need everything. The Chargers are in trouble. They need everything. But, we're going to wrap it up here. We could sit here and talk about needs all day and potential players for the Chargers all day. And we will at some point. We will get to that point where we're talking about it all day long. April, there's this thing called the NFL draft. And I know we're all really excited about it. And I am more than happy to have as long as a live show we need to talk about the NFL draft because, man, I love me a good NFL draft. But for now, we're not going to talk about it all day. But I do think we had a good conversation about these needs and about these candidates moving forward. In a fun little side conversation about Jordan Love. I've been waiting to have that conversation since he got drafted. Apologize for talking about him when this is a Chargers podcast, but I had to plug that in a little bit. I had to talk about Jordan Love a little bit, but I did make it relate to the Chargers slightly, so it's all right. But appreciate everybody listening. If you like this podcast, go ahead and leave it a like and follow me over at Centauri13. That is at Centauri13 over on Twitter and or X as they now call it. I'm never going to call it that. I'm sorry. It's going to be Twitter. I'm sorry if that upsets you. It's going to keep upsetting you because I can't for the life of me separate it. But I appreciate you all tuning in and hopefully we can keep this going every single week. Next week, expect another live show and we'll hopefully get another theater room, which if those of you watched the Ben Johnston video about a month ago here, that I put up with Dan and Jake, it's going to be similar to that. I'm going to try to flesh it out a little bit more, but that'll be coming at the end of the month. So for the next 2 weeks, you know what to expect, and maybe we'll do a little something in between. We don't know. I don't know yet, but appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one.